Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, so I just want to explain a thing that I've been chatting to some people about as a way of explaining what's been building up in astrology, and therefore astrology is just a language to describe what's building up over time. And what's been building up over this whole year has been culminating on top of what's been building up for the last 6.5 years since the start of 2020, in which astrologically there was Pluto conjunct Jupiter, which happens every just over 12 years. So we're at a halfway point. It's like when you have a new moon, which was like January 2020, but a new moon of Jupiter. A new Jupiter, therefore. The Jupiter being aligned with Pluto, and Pluto being the god that kills the lesser gods. Or basically death, you could say in a way. Or the deepest wounds, or the most dense, or the most unconscious. Whereas Jupiter is the most expanding. They're quite the opposites. And so in January 2020, these quite the opposites were conjunct. And it was the kick-off of what became COVID, and 3 months later the world got shut down repeatedly, specifically in very specified ways. Where we're now at the point where Pluto is opposite to Pluto. And a lot of things that didn't seem to make sense 6.5 years ago certainly seem to have played out where it's kind of obvious to see now. Just like it's more obvious to see things on a full moon than it might be on a dark moon. But anyway, the actual thing I wanted to explain that's not so much astrological, because all the other people who know astrological stuff, who already follow it, already know what's going on. Really, like, how does one explain to a friend who doesn't know much about astrology at all? And worse than that, just doesn't believe in it because of so many slack things being said that didn't really make a lot of sense, because astrology is very complex. So here's a very simple explanation of what's going on in the astrology building up to the last few weeks and going on for the next few weeks. Imagine that Pluto is the furthest out planet from the Sun, and also the furthest out planet that's recognised as a planet from the Earth. Therefore, it takes the longest time to orbit all around the Sun. That means it's got the longest frequency in years. It's 268 years or something like that it takes for Pluto to go around the Sun. And the same time for it to go around the Earth, because the Earth is within that orbit beside the Sun from Pluto's point of view. So another way of saying that is that Pluto has its own resonance in how slowly it moves, in what size object it is, of what density that object is. There is matter in Pluto. It is very dense. By contrast, Jupiter is very gaseous, the opposite of dense. So Pluto has a slow resonance base frequency, and it can be said that Pluto is the most base note of all the planets in the solar system. Yeah, and it's been spinning around that for hundreds of thousands or millions or whatever years. I don't know how long Pluto's been there, but it's definitely there now, and it's rock steady. So it is holding a wave pattern that's a very slow resonance of a very deep vibration that is all the time. Part of our biological body is reading the sound that comes from Pluto. It's just built into all bodies. We're not conscious of that sound. It's outside a frequency that we're able to hear, but the body can hear it. It's just the signals don't get sent to the mental. Unless, of course, one realises through the mental that such a thing exists, and then one could tune into it on a sixth sense kind of level. So next thing therefore is that Pluto has a certain resonance, a resonant frequency, which is a musical note, which is a very bass note, sub-bass note, from our point of view, deeper than what we can hear. So imagine that planet Pluto represented with a tuning fork of the actual resonance frequency, like the human frequency of the Earth. There's a planetoid frequency of Pluto. And imagine that frequency as being represented by a tuning fork, which is resonating on exactly that frequency, but we can imagine holding that tuning fork in our hand. And then imagine the next closest to Earth and the Sun planet in our solar system, the next closest is Neptune. And Neptune is also quite nebulous kind of thing. So it's also very expansive, and it's also very visionary, and it's also very dreamlike qualities. It's the what could be, maybe, what may be. So it also has a vibrational frequency that is a resonant frequency of how long it takes for it to go around the sun. I don't quite remember what it is. But the important part is it's a bit less years, and it's therefore a bit higher frequency. And therefore it's like a semitone or whatever it might be, higher pitch than what Pluto is. So imagine Neptune also as being a tuning fork that is the vibration of what Neptune is, and that there's a harmonic between Neptune and Pluto with where they are right now in the sky. And then the next one closest is Uranus, and Uranus is quite a bit faster than Pluto, not so much faster than Neptune, but definitely faster than either of them. It's got a higher frequency pitch. It spins differently on its axis. It does quite a few things different to the other planets, the other heavenly bodies. So it's also making a sound, and that sound is some sort of harmonic relationship with Neptune and Pluto at the moment. And at the moment what's happening is all three are what's called retrograde. They appear to be standing still for a moment in relationship to each other. So the three planets are making a very exact relationship at 4 degrees of their signs. The 4 degrees isn't really important. What's important is that the angles are quite exact right now. The angle between Neptune and Pluto, the angle between Neptune and Uranus, the angle between Uranus and Pluto. They're all very precise, and it's held still for a moment. And that moment in our time is like 2 months. And it's already been pretty much a month. It's going to stay pretty much exact for the next month too. We're right in the middle of this moment. And what I'm suggesting, that I haven't heard any other astrologer types be able to simply explain, is that the harmonic that's been held between these three outer planets that are the slowest moving ones, because the harmonic that they're holding between the three of them, the three are so in tune right now that they're producing a fourth harmonic sound, a sound that's not come from any one of the three, but a higher octave sound. Higher octaves. It's aligning in many dimensions at this moment in time. And it's never really done this ever before. So what happens if a standing wave becomes a very strong standing wave and lots of lesser waves are fizzling in the reverberations from the past, is that all the fizzly reverberating from the past get absorbed by the really clear sound that's never been heard before, that's rising from the most bass notes up to the highest tinkling extra dimensionals. There's a harmonic happening at the moment that has never happened before. And it's holding still for quite a while. And then Jupiter moved into its position as being opposite Pluto, and it made a 4-pointed, not just a triangular. And then just 4 or 5 days ago, while Pluto was still holding that speed, that frequency, that resonance that it has, and adding that into the harmonic, changing the overall harmonic, then in also came the moon onto a 5th point. So now we have a 5-pointed thing instead of a 4-pointed thing or a 3-pointed thing. And the moon moves faster, so that fifth point only held for a moment, but then the moon is carrying that pitch harmonic that the moon added to that shape. She's now carrying that all the way around the whole circle quite quickly. So that over the next 4 weeks, that vibration is going to have spread to all the others, and all the others are already vibrating with a new orchestration. So this is like the fulfillment of what Tolkien described or envisaged as a visionary when he wrote a prequel to The Lord of the Rings. And in that prequel to The Lord of the Rings, he describes the creator being as Iluvatar. That Iluvatar began orchestrating the sounds of all the spirits as if they were all musical instruments. These spirits are spirits, and one of those spirits is called Melkor, and Melkor was the strongest, most powerful of all the spirits, and therefore of all the sounds, and eventually Melkor in his might started to influence the whole orchestra of all the sounds of all the other beings to be following his tempo, and his tempo was kind of striving with Iluvatar's orchestration. And there was like a Christ-Antichrist back and forth between them, ideal and mundanity, struggling. But ultimately, just as Melkor was getting the strongest and starting to drown out and everyone was joining in with him, Iluvatar just introduced a new sound that had never been heard before in anything that had been played up to that point. And there was nothing that Melkor could do to mimic that sound, to try and copy that sound and just do it louder, just do it faster. It wasn't able to. And it's quite the symbol of the AI. It's quite the symbol of civilization, replicating nature and trying to control nature and be stronger than nature. But ultimately a moment comes in which a new sound happens that really obliterates everything we have been carrying in memory as what didn't really add up, but we made the best of it. Disappears when the whole sound of the true harmonic that actually is working kicks in. So this is always destined to happen, and we finally arrived at this moment. Now who knows, see what happens in your own lives, but I'm just suggesting that everything that didn't add up until now may well be falling into place quite beautifully. Essentially, if once upon a time our world turned inside out and we all got a bit mental, what's happening at the moment is the world is turning outside back in. But it's not destroying the inside out. It's like the idea of two different Merkabas and they're both spinning in opposite directions and yet forming a quintessentially wholesome vibration. Many people would have called this stuff that like humans ideally have 12 strands of DNA, but the aliens cut 10 of them and stopped them from working. But some humans have maintained having a 12 stringed DNA type of idea, and that when the 12 strings of DNA strings, when the 12 strings work as one, then it's the whole becomes a 13th strand that is entwined, and in that 13th harmonic the health of the whole global system returns. Like a homeopathic remedy holding a frequency can cure any disease eventually, but it will bring the disease totally up to the surface, and then the transformation happens where actually what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, or more evolved. Or so I just wanted to say that what's actually going on at the minute in the harmonics of the astrology of these heavenly bodies, which are physically spinning around relative to where we are on the earth, and we have reached a kind of a harmonic that certainly people like me have been waiting for a long time, because I feel like a barometer. I'm waiting to hear when it's finally aligned, and then one can have a sigh of relief, because that's it. We've held on until the time where the thing does cure, instead of being egotistically trying to fix everything, which was only making more problems, generally speaking. But anyway, that's enough of that. Hi Deborah, eclipse is coming soon. Yeah, there's an eclipse, I think it's on the 12th of August. Less than 2 weeks away. And I guess that's going to be when is it a full moon? Would that be a full moon by then? I'd imagine so. I mean a new moon? Will there be a new moon by then? One or the other. Kind of thing. Yeah. So just being able to pause for a moment and think outside of the body and being able to imagine looking in at the solar system from the outside, which is getting easy to do now because on screens these AI things are so easily able to do visualizations of things without having to go there and film it. They can just imagine what it would be like, and that's helping humans to also realize that we can just imagine what it would be like. So I prompt you, you human artificial intelligences embodied, imagine in your consciousness having a bird's eye view that is looking at the solar system and all the planets spinning around the way they do from the outside. Just visualize that and sit still with it for a while. And then imagine like a dancer, it holds a shape, just like on its little tippy toes like a ballerina, and manages to hold a tippy toe moment for like 2 months. And then it moves along, but what it's moving on from there, things have changed pace. The acceleration of time has reached escape velocity, that kind of stuff. Okay, bye-bye.